one beautiful thing that's going on here is that there's an intense artistic subjectivity to what Shakespeare is doing in this sonnet, but it's in no way without or apart from attention to the realities.
A real woman, yeah,
right?
And of course things that she's different from,
Yeah.
better than.
It seems like there's something we ought to be able to say about thinking of the sonnet as a distinct literary genre, and what's the kind of thing it can do or offer because of its structure in a way that you don't see so much in, say, an epic poem or a novel or a short story or something like that. So we're looking at Shakespeare's sonnets, or at least a handful of them for today. These are read as the final seminar discussion for the juniors, junior year. And that course is kind of looked at modernity as a whole, beginning with Cervantes. There's a lot of Shakespeare plays that are read. You got all the modern empiricist philosophers and political thinkers like Locke, Hobbes, Rousseau.
Yeah, classes all over the place.
Kant. And then we have this beautiful ending with some of the sonnets of Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. So maybe a word just about the sonnet form itself, that typically we've got sort of one, kind of geographically, you might say one verse, but it's composed of 14 lines. And the final two of which sort of stand on their own as the conclusion.
Yeah, their rhyming pattern's different, right?
Yeah.
Right, so the first 12 lines, I guess, are alternating rhymes, right? So, but then the last two are sequential rhymes, I guess you'd say. That's how you could see the difference between the last two lines and the previous 12, I guess.
Yeah, and even among those 12, typically you'll have the first set of 4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'll have a kind of maybe an A-B rhyme scheme. Mm-hmm. Then the next set of 4, C-D, C-D.
Yeah.
And then you've got your third set of 4, E-F, E-F. And then lines 13 and 14, which, as you say, simply rhyme on their own with each other.
Yeah.
There's usually, and they tend to be written in an iambic pentameter, such that you've got sort of 5 stressed feet or syllables within each line.
Yeah.
And
alternating, so ba-dum, 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 yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Though sometimes you could have a stress on the first syllable, and that could even have to do with the meaning of what's being said, or with your interpretation.
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be the case that you could stress this syllable or the one right after it, and that might have an effect on how you read or internalize the poem.
Yeah.
So when we look at some of these, it ends up being the case that there's a number of elements that contribute to the meaning of the poem.
Yeah.
You've got the meter, or these accents. You've got the rhymes and which words are rhyming. You've got the fact that there's a breakup between the 12 lines and then the final 2, but also within the 12, these 3 sets of 4. And within all of that, sometimes there's a kind of distinction between the first 8 lines and the final 6, which is a different sort of division entirely.
Yeah, they call that the turn or something like that, right?
Yes, right. As though things are leading in one direction through 8 lines, and then kind of a different direction to conclude things.
Yeah.
So it's a really fascinating, just in terms of the art form itself.
Yeah, and I would think difficult as a result. In other words, to produce anything that sounded good, obviously your content is the most important thing, but to have the fairly elaborate constraints here in terms of the meter and how long the meter is, how long each line's going to be, it would be hard to produce something good, I would think. Right?
Oh yeah.
And Shakespeare produced 154, right?
Yeah, it's astonishing, and we're not going to try to come up with our own here.
No.
So thankfully, but that'll be something we'll want to talk about at some point here. Is why all these formal constraints?
Yeah.
And is there something I mean, it's clear that great poets have been able to deliver us extraordinary poems amidst these constraints, but is there some positive reason, you might say, for for why these elements are all here is something they're able to afford us that that maybe you couldn't get otherwise.
Yeah,
It's an
yeah.
interesting question.
And maybe just to set up the question even further, you contrast it to our previous episode with The Wasteland with T.S. Eliot, where there is no fixed pattern. There's pockets of unity, right, or rhythm even, right, but almost no rhyming at all in The Wasteland, right? And it seems like, if he tried to shoehorn this kind of form into what he was doing there, it probably would have wrecked The Wasteland, right? But Shakespeare can work within it, right? And as much as I love T.S. Eliot, I kind of do think Shakespeare's a better poet, right?
Yeah. Well, let's look at a couple sonnets then.
Sure.
Is there one in particular you love, you want to read for us, and then we can
Yeah.
talk it through a bit?
I'll start with this one. It's a love sonnet. Most of them are, at least a very high percentage, and I even venture to say most of them are love poems of some sort. 29 is what I'm looking at here. So I'll just read it through, and then I'll go through it, maybe noticing a few things here and there. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast estate, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed, desiring this man's art and that man's scope, with what I most enjoy contented least. Yet in these thoughts myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day arising, from sullen earth sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered, such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. All right, so it's a nice poem insofar as it's starting in a situation of envy, I guess you'd say, right? Of thinking about other people's luck and my poor luck, right? And having sort of regret about one's life, I suppose, right?
And there's something really grounding that, right? That this person is on the down and outs.
Yeah.
By all accounts.
All alone, right?
Yeah.
Outcast state, right?
Mm-hmm.
He implies that and indicates that he's friendless, right? He doesn't have prospects, good prospects. He's wishing me like to one more rich in hope, right? But also he wishes he looked like him, featured like him, right?
Yeah.
Had friends the way he does, right?
Yeah.
And even the things I love most, I'm most enjoy contented least, right? And that's when the turn happens, if you will, in the poem, right? That's, I guess, whatever that is. 8 lines in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So starting the third group of 4 is yet, right? In these thoughts, myself almost despising, despite the fact that I was despising myself, happily, by chance almost, right? I think on thee, right? I remember you. And then he compares himself to a bird that at dawn starts to sing praises to heaven, right? Yeah. That's when he says, I wouldn't want to be a king if I couldn't be with you, right? Thanks to your presence in my life, right? Whoever his beloved is, right?
That's a great, by the way, that image there of the bird.
Yeah.
Arising from sullen earth, the lark at break of day sings hymns at heaven's gate.
Yeah, the sky, right? That's heaven's gate. Yes.
Yeah, and that it refers back to some of the opening lines where he says, right, I all alone beweep my outcast state and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries.
Yeah, right. So his own song, if you will, changes dramatically, right? Same address, right? Addressing still heaven, right? But now singing to heaven. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to be a little mechanical here about it, we do see that rhyming structure. Say just take the first 4 lines.
Yeah.
When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate.
Yeah.
So eyes, state, cries, fate.
Yeah.
Striking there how, okay, yes, we've got the A-B rhyme scheme, but the words that are rhyming, so eyes and cries,
Yeah.
have something to do with each
Yeah,
other.
they rhyme. You might say
Right?
their
Yeah.
meanings rhyme. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of nice.
And there's been a suggestion, made over the years that often in the sonnets you can find a word or a phrase that stands as a kind of climax, a pitch point, you might say, to which the action of the poem inclines, and then maybe from which it recedes, or perhaps it could occur at the very end. I was thinking here that occurs in the 9th line, so right after the turn.
Right.
So, yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee.
Yeah. You
And
think
then
of
my
thee?
state, etc. So I was thinking that haply I think on thee.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And
Yeah.
even within that, probably the very word
Yeah,
thee.
right. Yeah, he doesn't say anything else about her, right? But he calls her my sweet love. Sweet love, that's it, I guess, right? Or thy sweet love, actually.
Thy
right?
sweet love, right?
Yeah.
And it looks to be the only word in the poem that's in the second person.
Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah.
So there's something about that.
Except for thy, but that's the same word in the second to last line. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
But yeah, right, yeah.
And even that one is talking about, well, I guess you're right, though. It's still addressed to the other.
It's the
in some
same
way.
person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, your, right? Anyhow, I can relate to that poem.
Well, even in terms of this kind of initial section where the poet is describing his interior state, I was wondering about some of the word choices there. So, for example, when he says, "And trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries." So, on the one hand, deaf heaven, there's something nice linguistically about that, because there's this repeated sound, the lower E, as though it's kind of reiterating the closedness of heaven to him,
Yeah.
or from his perspective. But then my bootless cries, what's the word bootless doing there?
Yeah, I wonder if it's almost like the expression we have, an idea has legs, right? Bootless cries are ones that can't accomplish anything, right? Whereas an idea that has legs, right, will take off. My bootless cries, maybe that's how I took the bootless there.
Yeah,
But
somehow
is there another way to take it?
futile.
Yeah, futile, yeah.
They're not, perhaps, this could be a stretch, but maybe there's a sense of that they're, there's also a notion of the cries being groundless in some way,
Interesting, yeah.
not planted.
Interesting, that could be right. Yeah, I hadn't thought about this until you said it, but right, the contrasting of deaf heaven with heaven that's being sung to by the lark at the end, right?
Yeah.
It's as though, it's not as though heaven listens to larks, but it doesn't listen to me. But I think he feels as though heaven doesn't care, but in the end, he's optimistic that even heaven enjoys the beautiful singing, right, of the lark. But it's still at a gate, right? Heaven's gate, not into heaven. You still have that maybe closed door.
It's interesting that it's the other, it's the the beloved, that opens the possibility of heaven, you might say, in a real way for the poet.
Yeah.
Just looking also at line 6. So he's saying, starting at line 5, wishing me like to one more rich in hope, featured like him with friends possessed.
Yeah.
Well, you've got this notion that this other person has more hope. Why? Because of material things, because of things that this person doesn't even have control over.
Yeah.
right? Simply because of his features.
Yeah, his features, his art, his scope, which I assume means like his capacities, right? The things he can
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Yeah. Even the friends he
Even the
happens to
friends,
have.
external. Yeah.
But then when he says featured like him with friends possessed, that's another interesting repetition.
Yeah, like him. Yeah.
And it seems to sort of emphasize the, I almost want to say, obsession on the part of the poet with this other person,
Yeah,
right?
right,
That's what
sure.
envy does. It kind of causes you to just obsess over
Yeah.
your image
Your
of this
neighbor.
other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Your ideas of your neighbor. Yeah. Although even the neighbor isn't a particular person, right? It's this man's art and that man's scope, right? In other words, that's why I thought of it as in terms of envy from the beginning, right? He doesn't look at some person who's got it all, but he's like, that person's got one thing I want, that person's got something else I want, this third person's got a third thing I want, right? And they say, why can't I be the person that has all those things, right? And you want to say to such a complaint, like, you notice that none of the three people you were talking about have all those things, right?
Yeah, interesting.
These are graces that are bestowed broadly, right? And there are things that you most enjoy that you do have, he says, but for some reason you're contented least, right? That's that middle line right before the turn.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Okay, that's very good. That there's a real, he's not aware of it in his self-referential state,
Yeah.
but there's a massive overreach in
Yeah.
terms of what he's desiring
Yeah.
here.
What he feels that heaven should give him, right?
And interestingly, it's this one other
Yeah.
that contents him,
Yeah.
right? It's not a multitude of people with their different gifts, but it's simply this other, and it's nothing. He doesn't even go into what this other has,
Yep.
right? As he did with the objects of his
Nope.
envy.
Just for sweet love, right? Yeah. I don't think any of these poems, these sonnets, are particularly religious, but the thee could be just as well God here, right? At least from a Christian perspective. I don't think that's Shakespeare's intention, right? But like you're saying, the brevity with which the thee is described, right, leaves it very open-ended, I guess.
Yeah. So in the first four lines, the second and the fourth, so the B rhyme, you have state and fate. But then that
Yeah.
gets repeated,
State and gate. That's what
state
you're looking
and
at?
gate, in
Yeah.
lines 10 and 12.
Yeah.
And you don't have any other rhymings that get repeated.
Yeah. Right.
So
And state means the same thing in both cases, right?
state seems to mean the same thing.
My outcast state, and then my state, my later state, right?
Yeah, so why the repetition of, well, state in particular, with its rhyming consequence, fate on the one hand and then gate on the other. Obviously, structurally, there's something nice about it, that you've got this something of a chiastic structure, right? Where the what you have toward the beginning literally resembles what you have toward the end.
Yeah, right. And it's inverted, also like a chiasm, right? Yeah. So because it's even the language that the spatial language, outcast state, right? So that's the outward movement, right? Versus this is my state arising, right? So that's at least the participle that goes with my state, right? Then my state, like to the lark at break of day, arising, right? So that's an upward movement as opposed to the outward movement. So it's indicating a significant change in the disposition of the soul, right? The thoughts
Absolutely.
of the speaker. And even the word state has a sense of something stable and not moving, right? So I'm settled in this initial position of being outcast. I'm cast out, if you will, of heaven, outside the gates, right? And outcast from friends, right? From men's eyes. And then with the turn, he's a radically different, a state of going upward, I guess, right? A flight, right? Towards the sky, like a bird.
Yeah.
Not just waking up in the morning, right? But it's not just any old animal that he picks that's waking up in the morning, but it's arising the way a bird arises, right? And singing, right? To heaven, to the sky.
And that could be referring quite directly to the activity of making the poem here,
It could be, yeah, right.
among other things.
Yeah.
And in a way that the beginning part of the poem is itself an instantiation of this troubling of deaf heaven with one's bootless
Yeah,
cries.
right. This is the crying out. Yeah.
There's some surprises here too. Like, for example, in line 5, the final word, the rhyming word, is hope. And you would see hope and expect that to be placed maybe in the second part of the sonnet.
Yeah, right.
It's
The
more
optimism,
positive,
yeah.
and yet it's here as part of the despairing.
Someone else's hope,
right?
In this case, right?
Yeah.
Someone else's hope, someone else's scope.
Looking at the last lines, so he says, "For thy sweet love remembered such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings." Do you think we're meant to view the other and his relationship with the other as something of the past?
Yeah, I wondered about that, yeah.
Or is there, it's preceded by that climactic phrase, happily I think on thee, which could suggest present, but not necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, he could have said considered or something like that, right? It fit the same rhythm as well, right, in terms of pronunciation. But he says remembered. He could be just looking for a word that indicates thinking on somebody, but the fact that he picks a word that indicates past tense, and the fact that he even has to, so you got the little apostrophe there, he has to contract it a little bit to fit the rhythm, or at least he expresses that in the punctuation, makes me think he really wants to use this word, right? He's not just looking for anything that'll fit the scheme, but in other words, maybe it is supposed to be a previous love, right?
Yeah.
He's speaking to her. Maybe she's in heaven, right? Maybe she's dead, right? He's not talking. I mean, it's hard to forget the love of someone who's alive and you're married to, or something like that, right? But he's it's as though he's remembering that he had this love in the past, right? And she's maybe deceased, right? Who knows?
That would at least maybe be more buttressed by the way the opening lines read, where he definitely seems to be alone.
Yeah.
But it makes the upshot of the poem all the stronger, right? That this isn't even a present person.
Present love that he's receiving. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's as though it's present,
Yeah.
just through his recollection of it.
Just the fact that I had that love makes me not want to have the life of a king, even, right?
Yeah.
A king who never had that love, perhaps, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it recalls that line toward the end of Brothers Karamazov. Doesn't Alyosha say something like, one good memory,
Good memory from your youth.
it could be sufficient for one's redemption.
Yeah. So it makes the poem itself, I think you're right, it makes it much more striking and powerful, right? That just bringing back, but it's that expression, better to have loved and lost, right? He's saying the fact that I had this love, right, received this love, it was so sweet, makes me not at all concerned about my misfortunes today.
We were pointed to a significant difference between the first 8 lines and the remaining 6, or within that between the first 8 and the next 4. That's the turn. But how about the first 4 and the second 4? So both of them are within the negative first 8 lines. Can we see beyond the differing rhyme scheme a kind of structural or difference in terms of the content?
Yeah. Well, you do see they're both, they have the begin and end with the W, right? The wishing and the with, they have similar sounds there. And certainly thematically, right? It does seem like it's sort of encapsulating all the thoughts, the envious thoughts, right? Wishing me like that one, right? Rich in hope, featured like him with friends. Right.
Yeah, so, right. I guess
what
you
you
could
call
say
the obsession or something like that.
Yeah, that's where the sort of interior envy is really revealed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interior envy where he's looking outward at other people, right? The first four might be looking inward, I guess.
Yeah, but it's kind of that's what's interesting. The first four, he is looking inward,
Yeah.
but we're sort of seeing it from the outside.
Yeah.
Right? You got this picture of this guy who's in disgrace, he's alone, he's troubling deaf heaven,
Yeah.
and he's focused on himself. But then it's as though in the next four lines we kind of come in to his
Yeah.
thought process.
Yeah, his universe. Yeah. And it concludes with his sort of pout, right? With what I most enjoy, content at least, right?
Yeah. How about the meter here? So we've got, again, the 5 accents or stresses in each line.
Yeah.
And I was thinking just back to that, the climactic line. So this is the, I guess the 9th line.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So haply I think on thee, and then my state.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
It inverts. Is that-
Haply
yeah.
I think.
Oh,
So
yeah. So it goes both directions there.
seems like it goes both directions
A, B,
on
B,
thee.
A. Yeah.
But what's not emphasized is the I,
Yeah.
the first person pronoun.
Yeah.
And thee is emphasized.
It's definitely emphasized. Yeah.
Right.
Haply I think on thee. Yeah. So you have 2 unstressed syllables side by side, the lee and the I.
Yeah.
I think on thee, and then my state, etc. Like to the lark at break of day arising.
Or it could be like to the lark at break of day arising. So it might.
I see. So it
resemble
might
the
be
previous
repeating it.
line.
Yeah. Day arising. Yeah, maybe that's right. Yeah.
And so then that makes me wonder. So there's 2 places. Well, no, there's 3 places where he uses the first person pronoun. And the first one is in line 2, and it even begins with the first person pronoun. And is that one stressed? So, when in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state. You could read it as, I all alone beweep my outcast state.
Yeah, I guess that makes more sense than saying I all alone. I don't know. It seems strange to emphasize the all there. Yeah.
But if that's true, it would fit very nicely to the fact that the stress is on the I,
Yeah.
even metrically,
Yeah. Right.
in those opening lines.
And whereas it's not in the end, right? Even in the final line, that then I scorn, right? To change my state with kings. So neither I nor my is stressed there, I think.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, should we look at another one? Yeah, you pick one.
Okay. Well, how about 18?
Okay.
The famous.
Yeah.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. And every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So here we've got the same underlying structure. The 8 and the 6, right? So at line 8, we've got by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed, but thy eternal summer shall not fade. So you kind of have the turn there.
Yeah, but it's a pretty clear indication of a turn, right?
Yeah. How about the question, and hopefully it's not an imposed one, but again, as to some sense of a climactic phrase or word or line in this particular sonnet. And it seems like it could once again be that 9th line, but it's not clear to me.
Yeah, well, certainly the repetition of eternal makes me think maybe eternal summer there, because you start with the summer's day in the first line, and the third to last line you've got the eternal lines to time thou growest. I wonder if eternity is there.
But thy eternal summer shall not fade. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a phenomenal line,
Yeah,
just in its own right.
yeah,
And it does set up the next three at any rate. And I really like what you're saying about the kind of reference back to the earlier mentions of summer.
yeah. Because it's a contrast, right? Because summer's day is what you got at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So a 24-hour summer, right?
And it even has a lease
Yeah.
in line 4. Summer's lease.
Yeah,
of all
right.
too short a
Missed that,
day.
of course. Yeah, right. Too short, brevity, right? So the eternity is what's being contrasted with it.
There's an interesting immediate connection to the one we were just speaking about, in the sense that he's clearly not talking about some beloved who's simply an eternal being.
Yeah.
Well, right. Again, unless you kind of bring in a Christian
Yeah,
interpretation,
not
but
likely.
that doesn't
Yeah.
seem to work here. So it has to do once again with, at the very least, recollection. It's not to say the beloved does not exist right here and now. In fact, I think it's likely that the beloved does exist. But this notion of the eternal, when in eternal lines to time thou growest, those lines seem to have to do with the lines of this very poem, that there's at least, he's speaking with a view to a remembered presence.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I think you could be right.
Well,
Yeah. Well, I didn't have a theory. I guess I was sort of stumped by that third to last line about when in eternal lines to time thou growest, right? Do you read the syntax as sort of you were growing to time? Or I guess I'm wondering what is the to time doing in that line? Do you have any thoughts there?
yeah, so I guess I was thinking, and it's reading the 12th line a little bit through the lens of the final two.
Yeah, this? Is that what you're thinking? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That
the antecedent
the
of
sonnet
this.
itself is the
Eternal
eternal lines.
Yeah.
But I guess I was thinking of the to time thou growest, that through these eternal lines thou wilt grow in time,
Yeah.
so
okay.
to speak, or across time.
Across time, yeah. Despite death, right? Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Going back to the 10th line, not only is it that the beloved won't lose possession of her fairness, but in fact will grow over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Will become greater. Yeah.
There's something, it's astonishing, because on the one hand, this is immediately felt as an amazing ode to or articulation of the fairness of the beloved, and yet you could almost say there's something very almost aggrandizing about the poet and his ability
yeah,
here.
my poem will preserve you for all eternity.
Yeah.
Right? It gives you the eternal summer, right?
Right.
Or makes your eternal summer genuinely eternal, right? Yeah, he's expecting his poem to last.
Yeah.
Right? And to outlast her physical existence, right?
So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this,
Yeah.
not you.
Yeah.
And this gives life to thee.
Yeah. You are the beneficiary of my poem, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few poems like that where he seems to, it becomes strangely self-referential to the poem itself, right? About the poem's connection to eternity, right? And its overcoming of the passing, the transitory nature of existence.
That makes me wonder, I mean, going back to just the very first two lines.
Right.
So, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Right there at the very beginning, you have the presence of the beloved in a glory, a kind of splendor, a beauty. So that's never disputed. So these first 8 lines, they don't have to do with it. They're not like the first sonnet we read, to where you just have negativity or something.
Right, yeah.
But rather, it's that that to which he would make comparison is itself too limited,
Yeah.
right? The summer's day,
Yeah.
the physical world.
It's
you might
short
say.
and there's rough winds in it, right? So he mentions things that there's downsides. I guess, yeah, the buds of May, I think he thinks buds that sprung up during the May, right, are now being shaken during the summer by the winds, right? That shows her that she's more temperate than that, right? Or I
Yeah.
guess he's implying that.
Well, he's essentially saying, look, here's why I can't compare thee to a summer's day.
Yeah.
But then it's not as though he makes comparison to anything else.
Yeah.
Rather, you just got to be aware of the fact
Yeah.
that my artistry
Yeah.
is sufficient.
Yeah, I will capture your temperateness and your beauty, your loveliness, right, in this poem, and that will hold on to you forever, right?
Yeah, but it's so strange because how does he do that? First, by showing what things he can't compare her
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
and then
In other words, the
more or
answer
less-
is no to his question. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? No.
right,
Right.
no,
Yeah.
and no for 8 lines,
Yeah.
and then my poem is sufficient unto itself to give you life.
Yeah.
And somehow those two moves achieve the purpose
Yeah.
that he's stating he's capable of realizing
Yeah.
here.
By declaring that she's more lovely and more temperate than a summer's day, right? And that she owns fairness, as he said, right? If that's how you take the oest.
Mm-hmm.
Those, you may die and may lose the fairness of your beauty, maybe, right? You're corrupt like all things, right? But my mere statement about them or recording of it, right, gives it an eternity that will carry on in the minds of the reader, I guess.
That opening line, shall I compare thee to a summer's day,
Yeah.
it's initially read, it seems to me, we initially hear it as really as about the beloved.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Right. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it turns out that's not good enough.
I see.
But it could be that it's meant to be read as an act of self-reflection on the
Yeah.
part of the artist.
Huh.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
Huh.
Hmm.
Your art is better than that.
I'm better than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So maybe there is no woman in this. Yeah, I mean, it could be just a praise of himself or his art, I guess, maybe more precisely. Even though he speaks in the second person, right? He's talking to himself or something about himself.
Yeah, I guess I tend to think that there is a real beloved here,
Yeah.
but that the relationship of the beloved to himself and his artistry is it's an ambiguous
Yeah, it's
one.
blurry. Yeah.
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 And I guess I tend to
It's
be
too
more
weird,
struck-
right? To read it as entirely about his art.
I think that is too weird.
Yeah.
But it's just undeniable that there's a primacy given to
The art, the role of the art.
role of the art.
Yeah.
At least in the sense that it's the one that has some kind of effect over the very being, over the very presence, you might
Yeah.
say, of the beloved.
Yeah. Yeah, such that death cannot brag that thou wanderest in his shade, right? Death may kill your body, but it doesn't kill you, at least as to the extent that the poem preserves you
Mm-hmm.
and praises you.
Now, I guess you could say, to the extent that the poem is maybe for the sake of giving life to the beloved,
Mm-hmm.
that retains a kind of primacy
Yeah.
to this beloved person.
Mm-hmm.
But you could imagine a sentiment that would say, "Oh, whatever poor lines I scribble,
Yeah, they
you,
fall
you
short.
far outshine
Yeah.
anything of it."
Yeah.
And that's definitely not what's going on here.
Yeah. Shall I compare thee to my poem? You are more fair, right? More lovely and more temperate than my poem. He's not saying that, right?
I look at that 8th line. So, and every fair from fair sometime declines
Yeah.
by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed.
Yeah.
So, and maybe I'm thinking a little bit too Aristotelian here,
Mm-hmm.
but chance and nature's changing course
Mm-hmm.
are what we find as these forces, these movements, all caught up in the realm of that which is too little to be compared with the beloved.
Yeah.
It seems that the only remaining force of agency you have is the human.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
The artistry, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah, outside of nature and chance. With the assumption or the understanding that that artistry partakes of the eternal, right?
Yeah.
Right, such that it can preserve things for eternity so that they do not fade.
I'm tempted to say that the first phrase of the last line, "So long lives this," is it could be a rival candidate as a climax for the sonnet.
Well, is it really a rival? Because the antecedent of the "this" is the eternal lines. At least that's how I took it, right? Does that seem wrong? When in eternal lines to time thou growest, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this. And this, the eternal lines, gives life to thee. In other words, I guess I was thinking the eternal summer, the eternal lines, and the two thises at the end are referring to the same thing.
I think that's right. I guess I'm just thinking in terms of the sort of the flow of the poem, and just quite literally which word or
You
words
would pause on,
end up having
yeah,
the kind of artistic impact
yeah,
on the reader.
yeah. The sheer repetition of the "this" in the last line shows you that it's what you're supposed to hammer as you pronounce it, as you enunciate it well, project it.
Yeah.
So long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Yeah, so maybe you'd say that this, it's antecedent to, strictly speaking, the eternal lines, I suppose. And the eternal lines are not exactly the same as the eternal summer, but the eternal lines give life to the eternal summer, right?
Yeah.
So the eternal summer is like the secondary point of emphasis, right? At least in the way you pronounce it.
Wake of the first 8 lines, that 9th line is extraordinary. Just the sound of it, the flow of it. But thy eternal summer shall not fade. And yet it doesn't have the, as you were saying, the kind of more blunt emphasis that we find in the
Final
line.
Yeah.
In terms of the meter, once again, it seems as though the first line, the way we hear it, could depend on some extent on what we stress. So you could emphasize the very first word, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?"
Yeah.
Or, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?"
Yeah. Shoot, that's tricky, huh? Do you think the "I" is emphasized or the "thee" is emphasized? Because the first way you pronounce it, the "I" is not emphasized. Shall I? If the answer is going to be no, if it's a rhetorical or ends up being a negative answer to the question, then it seems like "shall" should be emphasized.
Well, and what's interesting too is that in no way, it seems to me, does "thee" end up getting stressed in that first line.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense though, right? Because it's not "thee" as opposed to something else or someone else, right? There's no contender with the "thee." The only question is whether the comparison is apt, right? Yeah. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
Yeah.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
What sort of artistic move should be made here?
Yeah.
So in that way, this is, from the get-go, very much has to do with the inner workings of an artist's mind.
Yeah.
Somehow.
What should I do is sort of the initial question.
Yeah.
Right? Right. He doesn't say, "Are you like a summer's day?" Right? But that would put you as a subject of the question, right? Yeah. Shall I make a comparison to a summer's day? About you, of course.
And so then by moving through those 8 lines, and especially hitting on the 9th with thy eternal summer, you see how the artist's inner deliberations are configured by the things that he's reflecting on, the targets of his artistry, you might say.
Yeah.
So So that's maybe one beautiful thing that's going on here is that there's an intense, you might say, artistic subjectivity to what Shakespeare is doing in this sonnet, but it's in no way without or apart from attention to the
A
realities.
real woman, yeah,
right?
and of course things that she's different from,
Yeah.
better than.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That second line, thou is the thing it would emphasize, right? Thou art more lovely. I don't know. I think you want to emphasize the thou.
Thou art more lovely and more temperate.
It's hard to figure out the meter there, though, isn't it?
Thou art more.
Thou art more lovely.
I think you're right that the thou needs to be stressed.
Yeah. But that still makes me wonder, because there's that art is the second word, right? That's almost a weird pun. I think he is talking about a woman, but you could almost stick a couple commas, right? Or read a double meaning into the art, I guess. Thou art more lovely and more temperate.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not.
So that the this and the thee would ultimately coincide.
Yeah, perhaps.
Well, you're the artist, Chris.
Amateur artist. Yeah, I'm not sure. It just never struck me before on that pun with the word art. Possible pun with the word art.
Why do you think that the first 8 lines focus on these natural elements, but for the sake of showing their inadequacy? Right, so these lines aren't directly about the sonnet or the poem, the artistry, nor are they directly about the beloved. It seems like, well, that's kind of stretching it out to devote the majority of the poem in some way to the things that you're not going to compare the beloved to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because of their inferiority.
Because of their inferiority, yeah. So,
well, I guess one thing that strikes me that they all have in common is they are things that are associated with eternity, especially in poetry, right? That is there. He's not talking about things that pass away, like a flower that blooms and then is wilted in the sun, but he goes more celestial, right? So the summer's day, so he sort of goes to the atmosphere and the season and the times. So the summertime is, and even sometimes talking about the summer, right? In the 5th line, sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dim. That's the sun, I guess. It's celestial in some sense, right? The things he's comparing it to, but noticing their the limitations and the transitory aspects, even among those things, the unreliability of them. Sometimes the sun is too hot, even in the summer, right? The beautiful days overdo it sometimes. And sometimes it's cloudy, his complexion is dimmed.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how these things are pointed out, but in no way denigrating the realities themselves. Because the very language retains their splendor, right? Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines.
Yeah, that's a lovely line.
And often is his gold complexion dimmed. At the same time, it alerts us to the number of, not in terms of the realities themselves, but in terms of the language, the number of negative statements that characterize this sonnet. Summer's leaf hath all too short a date. Too hot the eye of heaven shines. Often his complexion is dimmed.
Declines.
The declines, right? Untrimmed. Even the some of the positives are described by way of negative language. Thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession, nor shall death brag, thou wanderest. So
but there are negatives of negations, right? Not fading, not losing, nor death, right? Yeah.
Death won't brag. Yeah. So I guess I'm just struck by the indirection of this.
Yeah. Right.
That the whole thing is a kind of indirection. I'm not going to compare thee to a summer's day.
Yeah.
But then he never turns to something else he compares her to.
That's remarkable.
And then in all the ways he's not going to compare her, And even when it comes to the positive, you might say, that's all done by way of a remove from what could be the case.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. That double negative. Yeah, gosh. I guess the final lines are positive, but they're still very elliptical, right? So long as men can breathe, or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee.
Well, that's what's amazing, is that they are, in a way, the only just direct and positive statements. But the confidence there is astonishing, because they're predicated on 12 lines that haven't, in a way, referred to anything directly and bluntly.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's all been by way of a kind of a remove from one angle or an indirection.
Yeah. Yeah, even the look you get at whoever this beloved is there's a few words in there. That's about it. I mean, she's lovely, she's temperate, she's fair. Right?
Yeah. So that would fit with the notion that, again, that words can't describe.
Yeah.
Right? He's honoring that, in fact, in the first 12 lines.
Yeah.
And yet the way he's honored it is so great, so well done, that this poem is going to live eternally.
Yeah. Yeah. Just by this, I mean, the positive element he gives her, I guess that's the most, I find, again, the most striking. I still think it's at least one of the centerpieces is her eternal summer, right?
Yes.
Right. That's just a beautiful image, but it doesn't make you think of, it's clearly a metaphor for whatever is wonderful about her, right? Just sort of, she's the best of times, right? That's the best of times that go on forever, something like that.
Yeah. And it's not a comparison. It's just asserted.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade. So I'm struck by that, because it's the only item other than men at the very end that comes close to kind of closest to personification.
Yeah.
As though there's a way in which Shakespeare's signaling there that if there's a kind of antagonist in the poem, it's death.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Death and the passing of time. Yeah.
Death could utter these lines, but my lines,
yeah, right, good,
the ones that
will save you. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and you've got death as an antagonist that, like, as though he uses the word brag, right? As though death would love to have said it subdued this beauty, right? Or this temperateness, right? As though whoever she is, she's a target, right, of death, right? In the imagery, he says, "But I won't let him." Right? He will not win, because I will preserve you and give eternal lines to your eternal summer.
And that her succumbing to death would be a wandering, is what he says. That wanderest as kind of the two notions that come to mind there. Wandering is it's a strain. It's apart from what should happen, but it's also got something of the happenstance to it. Whereas that's apparently in contrast to what's going on here, which is deliberate.
Yeah,
it's
you're not wandering.
Thoughtful, right?
Yeah.
But it's also what ought to happen, somehow natural. It's fitting to the beloved that this poem should give her a kind of eternal life.
Yeah, so that she's not caught by chance or nature's changing course, right? That wandering almost seems parallel to the changing course.
I've always been, or not known quite how to hear the second line. So thou art more lovely and more temperate. That word temperate, it comes as a surprise, and yet it somehow fits. And I guess what's surprising about it is that part of the way I hear it, there's an initial sort of moral sensibility.
Okay, yeah.
That colors the word, but that's probably just wrong.
Yeah, I don't hear it that way. Yeah. I hear it just as the word temperature is related to the word temperate. That's sort of this is the sense of not too hot, not too cold, right? You're hitting that sweet spot between too cool of a day and too warm of a day, right?
He's not saying that she doesn't eat too much.
No. She says, yeah, you don't overeat at all or undereat. You eat just right. No. I think, yeah. It's certainly the imagery of a summer's day pushes the mind in you might say, the meteorological direction of temperate. Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the beautiful things there is that it has by casting her that way, literally there's this sense of warmth, right? So it has to do with the way that she quite literally makes others feel.
Yeah, she's a deeply pleasant person. I think that's the way of putting it. That's why the contrast in the next few lines can be thought of almost as imageries of personalities as well, right? Where you've got the rough winds of someone who's not very temperate, right? The sun being too hot sometimes, or the sun being too cold because it's behind the clouds, right? Yeah. Right. You can have personalities that are chilling and that are the opposite, right? They're more like storms.
Yeah.
Right.
But she never declines from fair to fair.
Yeah.
So that seems to be this note of, for lack of a better word, a kind of consistency, right? Eternal summer.
Yeah.
And that there's this this kind of this temperate aspect.
Yeah.
That is in some way maybe mirrored by the structure of the poem. And this gets into a consideration maybe of what it is about the sonnet that's special or meaningful. But at least in Sonnet 18, the structure of the poem, the fact that you've got these ordered rhyme schemes, the metricality, the 12 lines that all stand in one kind of structure, resemble the beloved, it seems to me, in some way.
Yeah, so there's a double significance, right? Obviously, the words signify the beloved, right? But you're saying even the way the words are presented and the order or the rhythm or the scheme of it also represents as well. And represents the same thing, I guess.
Yeah, and yet still, none of this would have been available to our minds or for being caught by us outside of
it having
what
been
this
written.
poem is. Yeah. So that again kind of brings us to this question as to I don't know enough to say exactly why the sonnet, what sorts of literary and historical movements in Shakespeare's day or around that time made this the thing that people did. But it seems like there's something we ought to be able to say about thinking of the sonnet as a distinct literary genre and what's the kind of thing it can do or offer because of its structure in a way that you don't see so much in, say, an epic poem or a novel or a short story or something like that.
That's
And it seems like at least one thing that comes to mind is the way in which a sonnet can immediately sort of just enter right into our own psyches, our own thought. And I guess what I mean is that you don't have stories with characters. Right? No. It's not like
not even
the
names,
Iliad or a short story, right, about a fisherman or something. But to the extent you do have characters, they're not named. There's a kind of universal, right, the one thinking about the beloved. As very universal human phenomenon.
The closest you come. So even death isn't capitalized here, right? So even when you personify things that aren't people, time is capitalized in some of them, right? So it's a character in a sense, but it's still not a person, right? People will talk about some of these poems as being about the fair youth, and the others poems as being about the dark lady, right? But they have no names, and for all I know, that the so-called dark lady in one poem is in one sonnet. It's not the same as the so-called dark lady in the other poem that talks about some destructive woman, right? So there's no plot arc, there's no proper names, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's evident that something like Sonnet 18 or 29 have a meaningfulness in and of
In
themselves.
itself, yeah.
Even if there's some broader meaning one could
Yeah.
discern if looking at the sonnets
Across
as a
them.
whole.
But just to add to that, on the one hand, so there's 154 psalms, 154 sonnets, and that leads to what I was going to say. It's close to the number of psalms, right? But it's off enough that it seems deliberate. I mean, it's hard to understand that there's some significance to there being to that number 154, which suggests to me that this isn't supposed to be unified in that respect, a unified work. Each of the sonnet is its own contained thing, and there's certainly recurring themes, but you're not supposed to look for a plot. I think reading these from the beginning to the end, you know.
They remind me, the closest I can get to is, well, I guess you could say, on the one hand, you have lyric poems, a number of which have resemblances to the sonnet, and the fact that you might have verses of 4 lines with their distinct rhyming structures. But then in the Shakespearean world, they come close to the soliloquy. And I guess what I'm thinking is that something the sonnet has, if it gets right into our psyche, it gives us, you might say, one movement of thought.
Yeah.
But it's a movement, right? You've got those 8 lines and then the turn, and then a kind of almost like a question or a difficulty and a resolution of some kind.
Yeah.
And so it's just something far more compact and concentrated than what you'd have in a play or even a short story. And the soliloquies are like that. They're an internal reflection on something.
Yeah.
And a kind of attempt to grapple with it somehow.
Yeah, that's right.
Though they are not nearly as formalized as what we have here.
I think that's right. Yeah, I was thinking about some of the soliloquies from various Shakespeare plays, but what quickly came to mind as a decent example was one of Macbeth's speeches, right, where he's talking about he's sort of mourning his life near the end, where he's the imagery of the stage. I'm having trouble drawing up the actual words. Sound and fury, right, signifying nothing.
Tomorrow and tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Out, brief candle. I guess what I was thinking is people will often memorize just that speech by itself because it does have meaning by itself, even if it's a dark and sad, relatable meaning. So it's like it could almost be freestanding from the whole play, even though it's obviously at a really important and decisive moment in the play itself, Macbeth. So yeah, like you're saying, it's as though each of the sonnets gives you a single thought that's concentrated into sort of an order that's intelligible, but it's a whole all by itself, I think. Yeah.
And by entering directly into us, that is to say, by not giving us these what you might think of as barriers through other characters and other actions.
Yeah.
They'd allow us the more we understand of the structural complexities, even down to the level of the metricality and the rhyme schemes and the words employed in the rhyme schemes, it's as though then our own thought starts to broaden or deepen to the extent that we're able to make these somehow part of our
make them your own.
lives.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, they're universal in that respect, I guess, in the way that a particular novel about a particular character is not as universal. It's true that your characters should be in a fiction story, whether it's a novel or a short story. You should be able to see human nature, these as being instances of human nature. But this seems to, like you're saying, you don't have to see the characters as objects for contemplation, but you actually inhabit these thoughts, right, on your own.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. And by putting them all in with this one verse, even in comparison to, I think of something like Robert Louis Stevenson poems or some the distinct verses, it draws attention to that concentration
Yeah.
of the thought, kind of like you have in a soliloquy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, mighty Shakespeare, we've made it through 2 sonnets.
Yeah, right. Well, maybe we should do it again sometime. There's plenty more sonnets to choose from.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.